The first man I killed that night kept riding for another 100 yards. I put a plasma round through the middle of his face, just outside the east gate, and any ordinary creature on any ordinary world would have gone out of the saddle, hit the dust, and stayed there. He didn't. He rode on through the red stormlight with half his head gone, one hand still in the reins, the other hanging wrong at his side, while the whole town of Red Mercy watched from behind shutter slats and saloon glass and prayed I was seeing something less impossible than I knew I was. If this recording survives, then the lockbox under my office survived too, and if that happened, then maybe there's still enough law left on this planet for one man's confession to matter. My name is Jonah Vale, Sheriff of Red Mercy, District Fringe, Colony World Iden 4. I am making this because the company will lie if it gets the chance, and the dead do not always stay dead out here long enough to tell their own version. If anyone finds this, hear me clear. Do not reopen Black Mesa Mine. Do not follow the tracks into the glass flats. And if you see riders coming through the dust after sundown, count their shadows before you let them near your gate. If they don't cast one, shoot the mounts first. Red Mercy sat where the last rail ended and the Badlands began. That was the whole town in one sentence. A mining camp that got ideas above its station. 3 main streets of red timber and alloy plating nailed against wind that could strip skin off a sand lizard. 1 church nobody trusted. 1 saloon everybody did. A water tower held together by prayers and rust, a charging yard for company machinery, and a rail platform where freight came in twice a month if the storms were kind and the line out west hadn't been sabotaged by raiders. Above us, the sky was a faded copper most days, bruised purple at dusk, and split by 2 moons after dark. Beneath us, the planet was iron-rich dust, fossil stone, alien ruins older than language, and things the colony maps marked as void zones because we don't know sounds cleaner when you print it in official black. Humans built Red Mercy. Robots kept it running. Aliens had been there first. That was the arrangement, at least on paper. The company called the robots service units, labor frames, law support assets. Most folks just called them tin men unless one was holding a rifle, in which case they found more polite language fast. The aliens were the Vair. Tall, narrow, gray-skinned desert natives with black eyes that caught moonlight like polished stone and long jointed fingers good for cutting crystal or throats, depending on the day and the deal. The company called them provisional trade partners, which meant it needed something from them and planned to betray them later. The Vair called the mesa north of town Karat, which roughly translated to the buried mouth. The company called it Black Mesa Mine, because men with payrolls always rename what they intend to gut. I should have listened to the Vair. That sentence sits at the root of all the rest. Before I wore a sheriff's badge, I was a gunman for hire. Before that, I was worse. There was a time in my life when a job was a job and the only difference between law and outlaw was who handed you the rifle first. Iden 4 cured me of some of that. Not because the planet was moral, because it was big enough to make a man feel the size of his own sins. By the time this started, I'd been sheriff of Red Mercy almost 4 years, long enough for people to half trust me, long enough to know every drunk by his walk and every liar by his pause, long enough to have buried men I'd joked with the week before and signed marriage papers for girls who still looked surprised by their own hands, long enough to think I understood what kind of evil a frontier town could hold. I didn't. Not even close. It began with the mine cave-in. Black Mesa had always been wrong in ways hard to explain to people who have never worked the edge of settled space. The stone there wasn't just black. It shimmered underneath, like oil trapped in granite. Veins of luminous blue crystal ran through the deeper shafts, warm to the touch even in night cold, and sometimes the mining drills came back humming after shutdown as if something in the rock disliked being disturbed. The company loved that, of course. Anything strange might be valuable. Anything valuable would be drilled. 6 days before the first rider came back dead, Shaft 12 collapsed with 11 men and 2 labor frames inside. Company posted the usual notice. Structural failure, rescue impossible, compensation pending. I knew 2 of the men well enough to miss them. One was Eli Mercer, my deputy. He wasn't born in Red Mercy. None of us worth remembering were. But he had the look of a man the frontier uses hard and doesn't quite break. Broad across the shoulders, old burn scar down the neck, voice like worn leather, steady with a rifle and better with people than he let on. He'd taken the badge because I asked him to, and stayed because some men need a thing larger than themselves to stand next to. The other was a robot named Marshall Unit C9, though everybody called him Coin. That was a joke at first because his brass face was worn smooth and bright on one side like old currency, but after a while it just became his name. Coin had been shipped in as a law support automaton 10 years before I arrived, then mothballed when the company decided a town this far out wasn't worth proper oversight. We reactivated him after the bandit years got bad. He talked little, shot straight, played cards terribly, and had once taken a shotgun blast meant for a child without so much as glancing down first. People trusted him more than they admitted. Maybe because robots don't pretend to be better than what they are. The cave-in took both of them. Or so I believed. 3 days later, just before sunset, my jailer's dog started screaming. Not barking. Screaming. There's a difference. Barking is noise. Screaming means an animal has looked at something the world did not prepare it for. I came out of the office with my hand already on my sidearm and saw the rider coming in from the East Flats. He should have been coming from the mine road to the north, if he'd been coming from anywhere that made human sense. Instead, he rode in from the open desert through ground nobody crossed without reason. Dust devils spun around him in the amber light. His coat flapped in strips. The mount beneath him was one of the company's steel-legged range horses, but it moved strangely, too smooth through the shoulders, too little reaction in the head, like the thing riding it mattered more than balance. I recognized the hat first, then the way he leaned slightly left, because an old knee injury never healed right. Eli Mercer. Dead 3 days. Coming home at a trot. By then, people had started looking through windows and stepping onto porches. You could feel the whole town catch it once. That shared intake when 100 private fears suddenly become public property. I walked out into the street alone, because that's what a badge is for. Sometimes the law isn't there to stop bad things. Sometimes it's there to be seen failing in an orderly fashion. Eli, I said. He raised his head. That was when I saw his face. The right side was normal enough, except for the dust and the blood dry dark at the ear. The left side was wrong in ways my mind refused at first. Flesh split open from cheek to temple, not torn but peeled, and beneath it something black and metallic had grown in branching lines through the bone. Not metal exactly, not crystal either, something between. It caught the light like wet stone and moved a little when he moved, as if it was still arranging itself. One eye was gone. The other looked at me like it was searching a room it remembered badly. He opened his mouth. Blue light flickered in his teeth. Then he smiled. I shot him in the face. That sounds brutal, and it was, but understand this. I had known Eli Mercer 4 years, and what rode toward my town wearing him was not my deputy. The plasma round took half his head and blew blue-black fragments across the dust. He kept riding. That was the moment Red Mercy understood. Not what was happening. No one understood that yet. But everyone understood this was bigger than grief and uglier than a miracle. I put 2 more rounds through Eli's chest. The mount finally stumbled when Coin, dead, cave-buried Coin, came around the far side of the livery with his old repeater and took the horse's front leg off at the knee joint. The rider hit dirt hard enough to crack a stone trough. Still, he tried to rise. The thing inside him moved under the torn skin like heated wire. Coin looked at me once and said in the calm, flat voice I had not heard since the cave-in, "Recommend dismemberment, Sheriff." So we did. That sentence should shame me more than it does. We cut him apart in the street while half the town watched from cover and the other half tried not to. Even then, he twitched. Even then, the black growth inside him kept knitting at exposed tissue, drawing scraps of dust and iron filings from the ground as if the planet itself wanted to finish rebuilding him. At last, old Mother Vance from the foundry came out with a slag torch and burned what was left until the thing stopped moving. Night had fallen by then. No one said much after. People went inside, bolted their doors, and started pretending their fear had not just been given a shape and horse tack. I brought Coin into my office and locked the door. He sat in the chair where Eli usually put his boots and stared at his own hands a long time. "Coin," I said, "tell me exactly how you got out of that mine." He looked up slowly. "There was no exit route," he said. "I ceased function at 1914 local. Then I resumed." "Where?" Pause. "Unknown." "What do you remember?" Another pause, longer this time. "Pressure. Dark. Mechanical contact. Internal restart. Biologicals were also present." "Eli." "Deputy Mercer was present. Alive." Coin's photoreceptors dimmed and brightened once. The machine version of a blink. "No." That word sat between us heavier than some sermons. Then he said something I wish he hadn't. "There was construction activity. Not mining. Not collapse. Construction." I barely slept that night, and Red Mercy didn't sleep at all. The town had one advantage over cities. Fear spread faster but cleaner. By dawn, everybody knew to keep the shutters barred and the lamps low. The company manager wanted me to issue a statement about isolated contamination and discipline anyone spreading panic. I told him he could write his own damn statement and nail it to his own damn coffin if he liked. His name was Bell Harker. Every frontier town grows one man like him eventually. Educated enough to sound reasonable, soft enough in the hands to prove he's never hauled anything heavier than his own ambition, and mean in the eyes in a way expensive coats can't hide. He represented Tycho extraction, which meant he believed whatever kept the ore moving was morally correct by definition. He still thought this was salvageable. A mine event, a biohazard, a local containment problem. Company men always think horror's a paperwork issue until it starts climbing their own porch. At noon, a bear came in through the North Wash. Not sneaking, not hiding, just walking straight through sun and dust like he owned more of the planet than the rest of us combined. His name was Kale Sar. Tracker, sometime guide, sometimes smuggler, full-time unpleasant bastard. I'd known him 2 years and never once caught him saying a word he didn't intend as either a fact or a knife. He wore desert wraps the color of ash, a long rifle across his back, and carried in one hand a polished length of black stone that looked almost grown. He came into my office, saw the burn marks still crusted on my porch from Eli's body, and said, "You opened the mouth. I hate when men are right in poetic language." "What mouth?" He set the black stone at my desk. It was warm. Inside it, faint blue threads turned like trapped lightning. "Under your mine," he said. "Under the mesa. Old machine. Older than us. Older than your companies. Older than this colony line. Your drills cut through the shell. Now it is feeding." "On what?" He looked at me like I should have been ashamed to need it said aloud. "Whatever dies near it first. Whatever it can use after." Coyne leaned in the doorway behind him, listening. I asked Kale what the Vare called it. His mouth tightened. "The shepherd below." That was bad enough. Then he added, "It remakes the dead. Sometimes the nearly dead. Sometimes metal. Sometimes memory. It prefers what is broken." I thought of Eli's face opening around that black growth. I thought of Coyne walking back from a collapsed mine after ceasing function. "What does it want?" I asked. Kale glanced toward the window, toward the town, toward the rail line disappearing west. "To climb. That afternoon we found the second body. Only it wasn't a body when we found it. It was Bell Harker's head surveyor, Deems, who'd been buried in Shaft 12 with the others. He came walking out of the church graveyard at 2 in the afternoon while the whole town was awake enough to see him clearly. No horse this time. Just Deems in a torn work coat, one leg dragging, chest sunken inward where the cave-in had crushed him, and black metal vein growth stitched through the cracks of his body like wire through pottery. He made it 3 steps before the widow Harrow put a mag shot through his spine from her bakery roof. That became the day's pattern. One of the dead would come. We would put it down. It would almost not work. Then the town would get a little quieter. By sundown there were 5. By full dark, 9. Some came from the mine road. Some came from the flats. 2 climbed straight out of dry wells with gravel falling off them. One was half robot, a labor frame with the dead miner welded into its control cradle by black crystal and old blood. That was when Bell Harker stopped talking about statements and started asking about evacuation. Too late. The rail line had gone dead at noon. No outbound cars. No company support. No station response from the last repeater tower west. Red Mercy was on its own, which is just another way of saying the truth had arrived. We barricaded the main street. Humans with rifles on the roofs. Coyne on the water tower with an old long gun and a field of fire down both approaches. Kale took the north edge where the mine road came in through the rock cuts. I kept the center with my sidearm, repeater, and enough cell packs to outlast a small war. We had maybe 40 people in town who could shoot straight under pressure. Another 20 who could shoot badly, but bravely enough to matter. The rest we packed into the strong rooms under the saloon and feed store and told to stay quiet unless the walls started bleeding, which is the sort of instruction frontier life occasionally requires. They came just after moonrise. Not charging, riding. That was the horror of it. A mob you can hate simple, a stampede you can survive by instinct. But riders coming out of the dust in loose formation, calm as a patrol, some of them men and women you have drunk with, buried, kissed, argued with, sworn at, or owed money to, that reaches into a different part of the mind. There were 16 in the first line, maybe more behind them. Mounts rebuilt with the same black metal growth fused into legs and necks. Dead eyes lit blue from within. Riders sitting tall despite broken bones, torn throats, cave-crushed ribs. At the center was Eli Mercer, or enough of him to hurt. Half his face was now a polished structure of dark alien material where the torch had burned him away. One human eye, one black lens, coat buttoned, badge still pinned to his chest, though upside down. He raised one hand and the others halted with him. No speech, no demand, no threat shouted across the dark. Just that stillness, and all the guns in town trained on people who should not have existed anymore. Then the riders split and something larger came between them. A freight hauler from the mine. 6 wheels. Ore cage on the back. Only the ore cage was full of bodies hanging upright in growth frames. Half-built. Some human, some robot. One unmistakably Vare. Black branches had grown through them and into the cage bars, holding them in place like fruit on a steel vine. One of them opened his eyes while I was looking. That was when Red Mercy broke and the shooting started. No speech about bravery, no clean line in the sand. A child cried somewhere under the saloon, and somebody on a roof fired too early, and then the whole town lit up blue-white with muzzle flash and charge fire. The first wave went down hard enough. Horses folded, riders spilled, heads burst, limbs came off. But the dead don't mind pain, and the thing remaking them did not care what shape they used to be. A man without legs crawled across 20 yards of dust, pulling himself on black iron fingers grown out of his wrists. One rider got his mount up the feed store steps after taking 3 rounds through the throat and nearly gutted 2 men before a coin took his head off from the tower. Kyle moved through the north lane like something carved from night, dropping shots clean and fast, then cutting close with that black stone blade when the ammo work got messy. The robots were worst once they got near. A dead labor frame can still follow force logic. A dead man can be slowed by broken joints, but a thing that is both machine and corpse learns ugly new ways to keep moving. One half-built unit dragged itself over the barricade with only one arm left and crushed Harker's company clerk against a rain barrel before anyone got a shot lined up. The battle ran maybe 12 minutes. Felt like an hour carved into pieces. We held because towns do strange things when the alternative is becoming raw material. Bakers shot from flour sacks, drunks sobered up mid-reload. 2 Vare traders who'd been planning to leave at dawn fought beside the church with hooked rifles and never looked back once. At some point, Bell Harker himself ended up next to me in the street, firing a polished company sidearm with both hands shaking so hard I thought he'd shoot me by accident. "Tell me this can be stopped," he said. I watched Eli Mercer, dead and rebuilt and still wearing my town's badge, climb back into his saddle after taking a charge blast through the sternum. "No," I said, "but it can be buried." That was the plan from then on. Not save the mine. Not contain the town. Bury the mouth. Cal told us there was an old Vare collapse charge in the lower shaft system, left from some war before the company ever landed. Not explosive in the human sense. Something better. A seismic breaker meant to drop stone like water through any chamber beneath it. If we could reach shaft 12 and trigger it, Black Mesa might fold in on itself deep enough to cut the shepherd below off from the surface. Might. That word runs most of frontier life. By the time the first wave broke, we had 11 fighters left fit to move fast, not counting me, Coin, and Kale. Everyone else stayed to hold the barricades. I remember their faces more clearly than the battle. That's how guilt works. Not on the grand act. On the specific people you leave with hard instructions and no promises. We rode north under the moons while Red Mercy kept shooting behind us. Me on a sand mare with one failing lung. Coin on a stripped-down scout rig. Kale loping beside us half the time because Vare moved through rock country like they were built with a spare gravity unit hidden in the spine. The mine road climbed into the mesa through cut stone and old drill pits. The deeper we went, the stranger the dark got. Blue light pulsed under cracks in the earth. Machinery we'd shut down days ago was running again on no visible power. Dead miners stood in niches cut into the rock walls, not moving, not attacking, just waiting like stored tools. Inside Shaft 12, the cave-in had been cleaned up. That sentence should tell you everything. No rescue crews, no company effort, no time for ordinary excavation. Just a neat descending tunnel where tons of collapsed rock had once been, opened by some force from below, and lined in places with the same black metal growth we'd seen in the dead. It looked less mined than grown. Coin scanned the walls once and said, "Non-human fabrication geometry detected." Kyle muttered something in Vare that I did not need translated to know was old fear. The seismic breaker sat where he said it would, half sunk into stone at the bottom chamber, shaped like a black obelisk with ring joints and 3 recessed hand ports that did not fit human anatomy. Around it, the chamber floor had opened into a vast vertical space beneath the mine, and down there, God help me, down there was a city. Not human. Not Vare. Not anything made for air in ordinary mines. Layer under layer of platforms and arches and machine towers folded into the earth like a colony of metallic bone. Blue light moved through it in pulses. Conveyor limbs or tentacles or construction arms, pick your word and none of them help much, worked constantly in the depths, carrying bodies, machine parts, stripped saddles, rail components, whatever the dead or the town or the mine had lost that day. At the center, anchored into the black rock, was the shepherd below. No face. No eyes. Nothing so generous as a monster you can point at and say there. It was a structure, a vast buried engine around a core of dark glass and blue fire, ringed with moving arms and latticed with that black metal growth like veins around a heart. It was building things, people, mounts, frames, whole, in pieces, halfway. Some hanging still while the machine worked through them, rearranging bone and alloy with patient intelligence. And there, on an upper platform nearest the shaft mouth, stood Eli Mercer. He had both eyes now. One human, one blue-lit metal. He looked up at us like he'd been expecting company. The men behind me began to whisper prayers, curses, names of wives, names of God, whatever language panic came in first. Then Eli drew. I never thought I'd see the dead quick draw, but there are humiliations even the universe saves for special occasions. He fired first and took Rusk Tanner through the throat before any of us got a bead. Then the chamber erupted. Our shooters dropped to the ledges and fired down, while machine-grown things started climbing up from the dark. Coin put down targets with surgical rhythm, every shot wasting nothing. Carl ran for the obelisk, black blade in one hand, carbine in the other. I went for Eli. Not because it was smart, because some debts arrive in forms too personal to outsource. He moved like himself and didn't. Same left leg hitch, same shoulder drop before he fired, but faster through transitions, the black material in him taking over where flesh used to hesitate. We traded shots across a ledge 50 feet above hell, while rebuilt miners tried to climb over the lip below us. "Eli," I shouted once. Not because I expected an answer. Because memory is a stupid animal. He did answer. Or the thing using him did. He smiled that broken metal smile and tapped the badge on his chest. Then he shot my hat off. That kind of cruelty takes understanding. We closed the distance after that. Too many climbers below. Too little space left for clean work. He hit me once across the ribs, hard enough to turn the world sideways. I put my pistol into the metal side of his face and fired until the charge pack died. He kept coming. So I did the only Old West thing still left to me on an alien planet under 2 moons and beneath a buried machine city. I drew steel. Not a sword. Just my trench knife, old and ugly and honest. He grabbed my wrist. The metal in his hand was hot. I saw, very close then, that parts of him were still trying to remember being alive. Sweat at the collar. Breath that wasn't needed but still happened. One eye wet with something too human for that place. "Jonah," he said. That almost killed me. Then the black in his throat moved and the word became something else halfway out, like gravel through gears. I drove the knife up under his jaw and into whatever had replaced the base of his skull. Blue light blew out through the cracks in his face. He convulsed once, twice, and went still against me, like a man finally allowed to become a corpse. Below us, Kale slammed both hands onto the obelisk ports. The whole chamber changed sound, not louder, deeper. Stone began to groan in every direction. The blue lines through the walls flared white. Coin shouted, "Collapse sequence initiated. 17 seconds to critical." That was optimistic. In 9 seconds, the first ledge went. The rest of the fight turned to falling in instinct. Men ran. Some made it. Some didn't. Machine-built things kept climbing, even as the rock broke under them, because obedience survives longer than wisdom. I saw Bell Harker nowhere. Learned later he never left town after all. Good. He would have just added paperwork to the nightmare. Kale cleared the ledge in a leap I still resent on a biological level. Coin grabbed me by the coat and physically threw me toward the shaft ramp when my boots slipped on a broken section of rail. We ran upward through shaken tunnels while the shepherd below woke fully at our backs. That's the phrase for it. Woke. The mind began to throb. Blue light chased us up the shaft. Behind the crack and stone, I could hear construction accelerating, as if the thing had finally decided secrecy was less useful than speed. At the surface, we found the night burning. Red Mercy was still there. Mostly. Half the North Street was on fire. The church had lost its bell tower. 3 rebuilt riders were down in the mud near the livery, 2 still moving. Townsfolk were dragging charge cells, water casks, children wounded, whatever they could carry toward the rail platform. And from the north side of town, from the broken mine road, came a sound I will hear until I die. Hoofbeats. A lot of them. The shepherd below had felt the collapse starting and sent everything finished enough to ride. We had maybe minutes before Red Mercy ceased being a town and became supply. Train, I said. There was one freight engine in station, inbound from Westline, delayed by storm damage and never fully unloaded. Still hot, still coupled to 3 ore cars and a fuel tender. If we couldn't save the town, we could save distance. Get the survivors out. Blow the line bridge behind us. Pray the collapse took the mine and not the entire district. That became the second plan. Frontier life runs on second plans. Coin took the engine. He interfaced straight into the control array through the port at his wrist, while steam and electric whine rose around him. Townsfolk shoved the wounded aboard. Kale and the Vare traders loaded the flats with whatever ammunition and water would fit. I held the rear with 6 others and watched the dead ride in. There must have been 40 by then. Men, women, machines, mounts, half-made things stitched together enough for purpose, if not beauty. At their center, larger than the rest, rode a shape I recognized only by the fragments, Bell Harker. He had not died in town. He had been taken. His fine company coat now fused into a torso cage of black metal, one arm replaced by a drill assembly. Face still mostly human except for the jaw, which had become hinged plating around blue-lit teeth. That felt right in a terrible way. Frontier always reveals what a man was leaning toward. He pointed at the train. The riders charged. What followed was less a gunfight than weather with choices. We fired until barrels glowed. Mounts crashed into the loading ramp. A rebuilt labor frame climbed halfway up the tender before Kale cut its spine cables and kicked it under the wheels. I saw Mother Vance burn 2 riders together with a slag hose and laugh like a saint gone wrong. Then Bell Harker hit the platform. He was faster than anything that large should have been. The drill arm tore through the signal post and one of my men with equal ease. He came for the engine because even remade, some instincts stay managerial. I met him at the coupling line. He swung once and missed close enough to tear my coat open. I put a charge round into his chest. It barely staggered him. "What did you wake?" I shouted, because rage asks useless questions. His mouth split in that blue-lit metal grin. "Progress," he said. Then he drove me to the deck. I would have died there if Coin hadn't done what robots do when humans run out of time. He uncoupled the rear ore car manually, shoved full power into the drive, and sent 200 tons of loaded mineral and fuel tender straight backward down the platform into the charging riders. No flourish, no warning, just impact. The explosion split the night in half. Ore dust ignited blue-white. Fuel caught. Riders vanished in a wave of fire and shrapnel and screaming metal. Bell Harker's upper body disappeared. The rest of him kept twitching while it burned. The blast threw me against the train wheel housing hard enough that I lost a minute of my life. When I got up, the engine was moving. Survivors packed into every carriage and flat space they could hold. Coin at the controls. Kale leaning out the side with his rifle. Red Mercy behind us was burning from 3 directions, and Black Mesa. Black Mesa was collapsing. The whole north ridge folded inward like rotten crust over boiling water. Blue light geysered out through cracks in the mesa, then vanished beneath tons of rock and dust. The shockwave hit the train a heartbeat later and nearly derailed us on the first curve west. For a moment I believed we had done it. Buried the mouth. Burned the riders. Saved who we could. Then Kale touched my arm and pointed back through the settling dust. One rider had made it out. Just one. Horse half aflame, body black against the fire, moving steadily along the ridgeline parallel to the train. Couldn't tell if it was Eli, Harker, or something newer. Didn't matter. The shepherd below was not dead, only buried. There's a difference, and I have learned to fear the space between those words. We made it 63 miles west before dawn to an old relay fort the maps still pretended mattered. Of the town, maybe half survived. Of my fighters, less. Coin shut down on the engine floor 2 minutes after we stopped. Core damage from overload. He told me, very politely, that I should file no maintenance request on his behalf because replacement was not economically sound. Then he powered off with his hand still on the throttle. I left it there a while. Cale says the collapse bought us time. Maybe years if the mesa settles deep enough. Maybe less if the company starts drilling again. Which company men will do, as long as there is one surviving memo somewhere using words like recoverable asset. So I am leaving this confession where paper, steel, and stubbornness might outlast official memory. Red Mercy is gone. The Rail West still runs. Black Mesa is buried. And something rode out of the fire after us. If you are hearing this because someone is talking about reopening the mine, stop them by any means your conscience can survive. If you are hearing this because riders have been seen near the glass flats, then it has already begun again. And if a dead man comes toward your town under a red evening sky, wearing a face you loved, do not wait for him to prove what he is. On Iden 4, the frontier doesn't make ghosts, it makes replacements.